All right, so I decided I'm gonna have like a variation of different conversations, right? So I want to start having hip hop conversations, right? I already made a blueprint for all types of different like ways I can have the hip hop conversations. Not only do I want to talk about like hip hop artists, what they say, what they do, the impact they have, all that stuff, which is why I'm gonna get back to Fat Joe later. Like I said, couple days, right? Maybe like yeah, the next couple days I'm gonna be like researching and doing like, but leading up to that I'm gonna do my own little thing, right? So with the hip hop conversation, right, most people know that hip hop was birthed out of the experiences and the struggles from the Black American community, right? But when other people come here, other foreigners come here, 9 times out of 10 they end up living in the hood, right? And Black people have always used music to in order to um elevate or amplify their voices to the plight and the struggles that they're going through, right? So I feel like disenfranchised groups automatically kind of like gravitate toward us. And like they said, hip hop is 50 years old, but at its 50-year old birthday, it's had some international grandkids, right? Like first hip hop birthed locally in New York, right? The little kid, it was in New York. Then when it became an adult, it started moving outside of New York and going throughout the coast and everything. And then when it grew up, it started finding marriages all over the United States and getting married outside the country, right? So now we're in the place where hip hop has given birth on so many different parts of the planet. There's hip hop in Zimbabwe, there's hip hop in Germany, hip hop in Japan. It's all over the world, right? And unfortunately, a lot of African Americans up till now have been brainwashed to believe that outside of Africa, there's nobody with us. It's just African Americans because something's wrong with y'all, and then Africa, right? But no, that would be a lie and a myth that we have to bust. Black people are everywhere. Unfortunately, the transatlantic slave trade landed on every part of the world, on all continents. So not only that, but there's also the untold histories of different merchants and the different people that tried to still make a way and enterprise for themselves without taking advantage of the system. And then there are people that were the freedom fighters that we do hear about them more than we hear about the merchants and the people that have tried to still cultivate and capitalize, even though there are things that are told about, right? So I got all the way off. I just want to have different hip hop conversations because we already know that hip hop was birthed out of Black experience, and like we use our voices for social justice and activism, right? And other disenfranchised groups, like I said, they get inspired by us. And I feel like they feel a way because they've identified with our struggle. They've identified with having being in police states. They've identified with not knowing what you're gonna eat next. They've identified with all these things about hip hop. So I feel like there's a culture of the underserved and the disenfranchised that likes to tether itself to hip hop, right? And some people want to be able to work with hip hop and say that they've given back to hip hop. And unfortunately, just like the earth, hip hop gets taken advantage of all the time, right? So there are people that, whether they're Black or not, they're power to the people, part of the movement, right? Viva la revolution, right? So it's all about the movement and stuff, about pushing a way forward and about making progress and a better tomorrow for people that don't feel like they have progress or a better tomorrow. That's what hip hop was about, right? But um with these hip hop conversations, that's a part that has to be elevated always. And I understand why a lot of since we're having the FBA conversation, I understand why a lot of foundational Black Americans kind of feel like they have to gatekeep and protect the culture, because there are so many different music movements, not even just music movements, ingenuitive ideas, period, intellectual and creative properties that foundational Black Americans have created. But because of the landscape of the world and the campaign, the smear campaign about our communities, people sometimes don't take us seriously when we create stuff, and they just don't want to see another rock and roll. They don't want to see another jazz, where it's like, well, dag, if you look at it now, it don't seem like Black people had anything to do with it, right? And I feel like a lot of Black people just want to be able to feel like, well, everybody's always telling us we don't have any culture, but everybody enjoys the cultures that we create. Everybody enjoys the movements that we push forward and everything. And then when it gets popular and it gets like capital, there's too many communities that don't want us to benefit off of it, and they want themselves to benefit off of it. So that's where African Americans are coming from when they say stuff like this. But then at the same time, we do love our brothers and sisters from throughout the diaspora, and there are some Black people that understand the way that the world wants to come in and participate in the cultures that we've created. There are some people that have no problem with that. I don't have a problem with that, but there are some people that do have a problem with that, and I understand why. Like I said, they don't want it to be co-opted, and then have people looking at Black people like, y'all didn't have nothing to do with that. Y'all didn't critique. Like, I think there's just a fear there. There's that inherent fear that we'll be gentrified. We don't want to get our music gentrified again. Like I said, hip hop wants to stand and be able to provide fruits for the originators this time. This is a genre of music that's been specific to Black culture, right? But this is not the first time a music has been specific to Black culture and then co-opted. So I feel like there are some people that are just afraid of the co-opt, and it might come off crazy, the things that they're saying and the way that it's sounding. But then there are some people that want to benefit off of the co-op and don't want Black people to benefit off the co-op. So when people sit there and try to down Black people about the foundations and things that they've established in this country, sometimes Black people get offended, because it's like, there are some people, like I said, that are not Black that want to add to the movement, but that also still pay homage to the fact that Black people have done it. That's all Black people ask for. Pay homage to that, and make sure that the descendants of the originators and descendants of the thing that was created, make sure that they're being able to live off of it, making sure that their future generations are being able to, especially if it's generating billions and trillions of dollars. They want to be able to make sure that our communities can benefit off of it, instead of being disenfranchised by it because it's making money now. So I get what Black Americans are saying, but then at the same time, I understand what other communities are saying and why they feel the way that they feel, because they've been inspired by hip hop, and they've went on to create their own movements outside of the things that hip hop represents and outside of the things that hip hop stands for, right? Like I said, the underserved and the franchise love that type of thing. I feel like this is a conversation for another day, but there's some things about rock and roll that have to be discussed too, because rock and roll didn't originate hip hop, but it did help. Rock and roll, there are parts of the punk movement and parts of the punk scene movement and parts of the metal movement that helped push the culture of hip hop forward. You know, like ragecore hip hop, all that other stuff. It helped to make it more popular and push it forward. Even when Lil Wayne did his whole skater arc and was talking about being a skater boy, and the whole scene with that, like, so there are other communities and other groups that have had a hand in pushing hip hop forward. So I feel like it wouldn't be right to say that this is just a thing that was solely pushed by Black people. It was something that was created out of the Black struggle, but there are so many other groups that identified with it that they begin to help push it, that they begin to emulate the style and start creating things outside of themselves. Like, and I feel like that's beautiful, and I feel like hip hop deserves to keep growing, and hip hop deserves to keep evolving, right? So I understand wanting to protect the sacredness of where it came from, but I also understand wanting to push it forward and making sure that it grows and that it evolves, and that the hip hop has been so inspirational in the past decade alone. Hip hop has done so much to push forward movements in the world, period. Right? So I feel like those are some important conversations to have, but we also have to talk about. I do want to have a conversation about hip hop and using people's criminalization records against them in hip hop in order to sabotage. That's something that has to be talked about, and we also have to talk about how some of the social activism groups get targeted and turned into black extremist groups because of their power of social activism. Social activism versus capitalism can sometimes be some sticky mess, right? So if you're not lobbying and they're not getting their interests met, and you're sitting there going against their interests and their profits, sometimes efforts will be made to stomp out voices. We all know this. The machine cares about its money. And hip hop has been one of those power to the people, fight for your rights type of genres. And it evolved into so many different things. It not only was it power to the people, fight for your rights, it's also venting your different frustrations. It's also going out to be able to celebrate despite what you're going through. It's also talking about your family, talking about your community. It's also the culture of relationships, the things that you see around you, right? So there's so many different ways to talk about this hip hop conversation, because I feel like we need to talk about social activism. Like, we need to talk about Black Lives Matter, we need to talk about the Panthers, we need to talk about the Rangers, all that other stuff, right? And I do also want to have a hip hop and reggaeton conversation. I feel like that one is important. A hip hop reggaeton and a hip hop international. We need a hip hop local conversation, a hip hop reggaeton, a hip hop international, right? Because hip hop is growing so big, and its future generations need to be able to survive, but also the foundations that established hip hop needs to be protected. So we need to find that thin line between, okay, how can we protect the foundation that hip hop was birthed out of, versus how can we protect the way that hip hop has grown and expanded throughout the world, right? So this is just the beginning of the hip hop conversation. I'm going to do a deeper dive. I just wanted to kind of get this out there, kind of hash that out. And this is the introduction to, hip hop conversations. I'm going to have a lot of different hip hop conversations, but this is just to kind of gauge what you guys feel about it. What do you got? What kind of things have you guys thought about? What do you think could be added from the conversation? What do you think needs to not even be discussed? Like, I want to talk about all these different things because I care about hip hop. I'm going to have hip hop conversations. I'm going to have music conversations, period, because I love music and entertainment, right? But I specifically want to have hip hop conversations because I feel like it's important for Blackness, not only for foundational Black Americans and people who have had a part in establishing the movement, but it's also important for the international culture. I feel like Black people in America need to establish and protect the culture here, but we also need to establish and protect a culture that's emerging internationally for the diaspora. That's a whole nother thing that we need to talk about, right? Because we all are inspired by each other, and even though we have different experiences and different cultures, there's a element of there's certain things that we're all in this together as Black people, and then as people of color, right? Those are different topics too, where it's like there's a Black conversation and then there's a people of color conversation, right? So, and I feel like Black people have to break it down in three ways: the Black conversation, the people of color conversation, and then the mainstream conversation where everybody is involved, because those are different variances and different levels. And then even within Blackness, there's different conversations that have to be had. And So I just feel like the art represents the culture, right? And the art of hip hop shows the heart of what we experience, is what we're going through, and how we've been existing in this society as black people, and the black people and the people that have been with us and fighting for us, and how they exist because they take us and they love us and they love our culture. Because I feel like people get affected that are not black because they love black culture. There's still stereotypes and variances that happen to non-black people for dressing in hip hop culture, dressing in that style, consuming that music, right? People will start to have stereotypes about even people that are not black that consume hip hop. So I feel like there are so many different complicated ways that these conversations could be broken down, because they all need to be had, because we as black people have contributed something beautiful to this world through hip hop, and we got to figure out how we move forward and how we protect it for us, and how we move forward and have it develop for the world. But yeah, like I said, this is an introduction. I'm gonna do a deeper dive. I'm probably gonna do a bunch of these different conversations, right? So stay tuned for my hip hop conversations. Yeah, I hope you enjoy what I talk about. What is your takeaway? What do you feel about the direction of hip hop? What do you feel about the foundational black Americans that had stuff to do with establishing hip hop? What about the black immigrants? What about the non-black immigrants? What about the white lens? All that other stuff. Because we don't live in a society with just black people. We live in a society with everybody, but we still need to have conversations as black people and as people of color, because I feel like I said those are similar conversations, similar but different, right? Very extremely similar experiences, but also extremely different. It's two experiences that are extremely similar and extremely different at the same time. Because, of course, I'm gonna have the BIPOC discussion. Because even though I'm black, I'm still light skinned. And I still sometimes look other. So I have to keep that in my mind, right? But I also have to keep in my mind that I am in the black community, and there are people that is going to have different experiences than me because they have different skin tones, just because the way this world is set up. I ain't come up with these rules. It's just how it is, right? And I just feel like we got to have honest conversations as black people. Like, I feel like I want to have conversations with the grapevine, like with Ashley and them, because they always bring people from the entire diaspora together to discuss certain things. But yeah, this is my start of hip hop conversations. Stay tuned. I'll be back with more. This is just an introduction. This is just to open the door, and hopefully other people will start talking about how they feel about these sorts of things. Other people have started talking about how they feel about some of these things, but I'm going to open the door, and I just feel like black people need to protect themselves, but also bridge the gap with the rest of the world, and we also need to keep our relationships that we have with not only the BIPOC communities, but with the mainstream community of the world, locally and internationally. So, with that being said, I'm off. I've been saying I'm off this for like 5 minutes. I'm really off this time. Just let me know what you guys think. Okay? Comment, like, share, subscribe. I know I'm saying it like that's it. Like I said, this is my thing. I do this all the day. All right? So, yeah. With that being said, bye. Deuces. Peace. Hit me on the flip side. Bye.